Hi, and welcome to our first class flipping out session. We are going to have these flipped classroom sessions on a regular basis because I feel that if you guys aren't rushed to take notes, if you don't have to come up with questions on the spot, or if you don't understand a material, the flipped classroom is the perfect ideal situation because you can take notes in your own time. You have time to think about the material and come up with questions so that when you are in class, you are able to have an active discussion with your classmates and myself in order for you to further your learning on the material. So we're going to go ahead and get started. You do have some expectations though. As you are watching this flipped classroom session, you are to take your vocabulary words, jot them down in your notebook, and come up with your own definition that makes sense to you. You also have to answer the questions that I've posed in the PowerPoint, and you can pause and rewind the video as much as necessary in order for you to find the answers that you need. So I'm excited and I look forward to doing more of these videos, and I hope that they are beneficial for you to learn and to further your knowledge in ecology and biology. So the first thing, or the first unit that we're going to cover, is the levels of organization. The Georgia Standard of Excellence says that you will obtain, evaluate, and communicate information to examine the interdependence of organisms with one another and their environment. I know it sounds like a mouthful, but by the end of this unit, you will be able to accomplish and master this standard. The vocabulary words that you are to jot down in your notebook and come up with your own definitions for are ecology, population, community, ecosystem, biosphere, abiotic, and biotic. If you need to pause the video to get these down, please do. Resume it when you are ready to move on. Questions that you're going to address while watching this video is: what are two factors that are necessary for an ecosystem to be self-sustaining? What do organisms compete for in an environment? What are 4 examples of abiotic factors? And what is a limiting factor? And you're going to provide your own example. The first term that we are going to cover is ecology. Ecology is the study of the interactions of living things with each other and their physical environment. There are ecological organizations. The very first is a population, and that is all of the members of a species inhabiting a given location. The members of a species would be a group of dogs or a pack of wolves or a colony of ants. They all have to be a part of the same species in order for it to be a population. A community are all of the interacting populations in a given area. So that could be the ants, the dogs, and the wolves, and they live all together in the same place. Next, you have an ecosystem, which are the living community and the physical environment functioning together as an independent and relatively stable system. So you have living things and non-living things that are all in the same area, and it's a stable environment, and there's not much else that's needed. Next, you have the biosphere, and that's the portion of the earth where life exists. A biosphere is comprised or composed of numerous complex ecosystems. An ecosystem involves interactions between abiotic or physical factors and biotic or living factors. The members of the community in the ecosystem and environment must interact to maintain a balance. So here you have the different levels. You start off with the biosphere, which is the entire earth that supports life. Next, you have different ecosystems within this biosphere that are all self-sustaining. Next, you have a community, which takes out the abiotic factors, but are all the living things that interact with one another. Next, you have a population, which is just of one species of organisms. And last, you have the individual organism. Ecosystems are self-sustaining if the following requirements are met. There are two things that are necessary for an ecosystem to be self-sustaining. There should be a constant source of energy and a living system capable of incorporating this energy into organic molecules. This would be any type of organism that performs photosynthesis and turns light energy into organic energy or molecules. 2, a cycling of materials between organisms and the environment. And this would be how photosynthesis and cell respiration work between producers and consumers, the carbon cycle, the nitrogen cycle, the water cycle, all of these different cycles of materials between organisms and their environment. In all environments, organisms with similar needs or may have to compete with each other for resources, and this includes food, space, water, air, shelter, and even finding a mate would be a competition. You need all of these things in order to survive, so if there are limited resources, a competition will ensue so that the strongest will survive. Abiotic factors. Abiotic factors are those physical and chemical factors which affect the ability of organisms to survive and reproduce. Examples of abiotic factors include the intensity of light or lack thereof, the different ranges of temperatures in an area, the amount of moisture in the atmosphere and in the soil, different types of substratum, which are the different types of soil and the different types of rocks found in an area. 5, the availability of inorganic substances such as minerals. 6, supply of gases such as oxygen, carbon dioxide, and nitrogen. And then 7, the pH balance or level in an environment. Each of the prior listed abiotic factor varies in the environment, so you might have a little bit more of something as opposed to another. And it may act as a limiting factor, determining the type of organisms that can exist in that environment. Examples of limiting factors. Limiting factors are anything that causes an organism to be better suited or less suited for an environment. So, the cold, low annual temperatures common to northern latitudes determines in part the species of plants and animals which can exist in that area. Animals that have thick fur or blubber or that can withstand cold temperatures year-round are able to live in that environment. Animals that can't retain heat well probably would not survive. Same thing with plants. If you're not able to withstand cold temperatures, more than likely you will not survive in that area. Number 2, the amount of oxygen dissolved in a body of water will help determine what species of fish will live there. And 3, the dry environment of the desert regions limits the organisms that can live there. As you look at that third example, think about the type of organisms you might find in the desert. They are ones that can retain water and those that can withstand high temperatures and low temperatures at night, because as you know, in the desert it gets really hot in the day, really cold at night. A lot of cold-blooded organisms live in the desert, but other organisms that cannot retain heat well do not survive. This is the last slide that we're going to cover. You are to make sure that your vocabulary words are all defined and make sure that you've answered all 4 of the questions that were posed at the beginning of this PowerPoint. And if you have any questions, make sure that you formulate those and be ready to discuss these topics when we get to class. Thanks for joining me, and I hope that you enjoyed your first Flipping Out session.